Hi guys, this is Zach from Watches on You, and today I'm taking a look at what is the cheapest solid gold men's Rolex. This is the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Date reference 15037. So this watch comes in at a pre-owned price of $6,650. Now for a solid gold Rolex, a men's Rolex, that is for sure the cheapest one that I've seen. I know that because the other options would be either a solid gold Datejust or a solid gold day date, and I know those both trade at a minimum at around $9,000. So this is quite a bit cheaper, and I'm going to go over why I think this actually is the one you should get, because there aren't a huge number of differences between those watches. So the main difference between this watch, there are really two. Well, the main differences are really two. One, this is a 34 millimeter case instead of a 36 millimeter case. So if you have a bit larger of a wrist, this is going to wear a bit smaller, but I think that the 34 mil, and you'll see it in the wrist shot, actually wears quite nicely. So I don't notice a huge difference from the 36 mil is really what I'm saying. The other difference is that this is 14 karat gold. So most solid gold Rolexes you'll see are in 18 karat gold, when this one is 14 karat. So this watch is going to give you a bit brighter of a tone. It's going to be, because 14 karat is just less pure than 18 karat. So the 14 karat is going to be lighter in color. It's not going to be quite as rich of a gold color, but I think it still looks great. I like the tone of 14 karat as well. And that's really the main difference. Now, one other thing that I like about this watch is that this actually, instead of using the Jubilee bracelet, like most of those watches have, has the Rivet Oyster bracelet. Now, Rolex doesn't do these rivets anymore, and I think that that is definitely a good aspect of this watch. I think it's really cool and shows you kind of the earlier days of bracelets, where you can actually see that it was put together by little rivets that were connected to bars that would go through the links and put them together. Now, these are hollow links here. That's the same as on the Jubilee bracelet ones as well. They'll have hollow center links, just like this does. So there's not a huge difference in like the amount of gold you're necessarily getting out of this watch, which is cool. And when I say the hollow links on the Jubilee, that's for the kind of the model that's before the newest ones. So the newest day date is going to have solid links, but when Rolex was doing hollow center links for all of their watches, that's kind of the era that I'm talking about for the hollow Jubilee links. You can see on the bracelet here, it's got the standard Rolex clasp. You can see it gets pretty thin actually down here, which actually contributes to the wearability of this a bit more. But it's got the classic Rolex pressed metal clasp, which is great. You can see that it's got also the pressed metal outer clasp with the Rolex logo up there. It has the polished sides, as you saw before, and then the main case has the fluted bezel as well. And that's one difference about this, the steel Oyster Perpetual Date and the Datejust. The steel Oyster Perpetual Date has a smooth bezel that's steel, versus the Datejust had either an engine turned or a fluted white gold bezel, but this has the fluted bezel in the solid gold. So they're very similar watches. Unless you look really close, you're not going to see a huge difference. So one other thing, this has the acrylic crystal. As you can see there's some of the scratches reflecting off the dial there, and that's just because this is going to be it's going to scratch up a lot easier than a sapphire crystal, but the cheapest Datejust and day dates, those are also going to have acrylic crystals. So that's not a huge difference from the ones that start at about $9,000. And one good aspect about acrylic crystals is, one, I found that they don't fingerprint up as much as sapphire. I'm not sure if that's like 100% proven fact, but I have noticed that, as I have an acrylic crystal Omega Seamaster. It's a vintage from the 60s, and I noticed that gets way less fingerprints on the crystal than do some of my other watches with sapphire crystals. Another advantage, they're more shock resistant. So they're going to scratch more, but they're also going to be harder. So if you bump your watch on something, it's less likely to crack the crystal if it's acrylic than if it's sapphire. And another thing is they're a lot cheaper to replace. So you can always replace an acrylic crystal, and it's not actually going to run you that much money, just because it's plastic versus replacing artificial sapphire, which is obviously going to be a lot more money. So that's one good thing about this watch. And some people kind of like the vintage feel you get from an acrylic crystal versus a sapphire. So now let's actually move on to the wrist shot. So I'll open the clasp up here, take my glove off. So on the wrist, this watch, it wears very similarly to a 36 mil. I thought it was 36 mil when I first put it on. I hadn't seen the size yet. Oh, my glove got pinched there. And so I don't actually notice a huge difference. So I have about a 7-inch wrist. So if you like smaller watches, you don't mind a 36, you probably won't mind this watch at a 34. I don't notice a huge difference between it. It wears almost the same to me, at least, as the 36. I have about a 7-inch wrist, and I think it actually fits my wrist well. I don't mind smaller watches too much. I tend to like to stay around the 39 mil mark for like sports watches, but being this is a solid gold, it's a bit more dressy. I think that the 34 mil is fine on my wrist. And that is a standard men's size still. That's not like I mean, I guess it's kind of unisex now, but at the time this was a standard men's size. No problems with it whatsoever, and I don't mind the size personally, especially on the bracelet. The bracelet makes it appear larger than if you, say, had it on a leather strap or something, but I don't mind the size at all, and I love the look of the solid gold. I mean, you can't beat a solid gold Rolex if you're looking for kind of show factor. They all pop, and you can see like the champagne dial even, I mean, it just looks fantastic. So I think that this watch is great. If you want a solid gold Rolex and you don't want to spend a huge amount of money for one, you can get this for around $6,600, which I think is great. I mean, the show factor you're getting out of this really can't be matched at the price point. There's nothing, again, that beats a solid gold Rolex for that, and no one, unless they really know their watches, is going to be able to tell that this is an Oyster Perpetual date versus a Datejust or even a day date. Really, most people will think this is just the President Rolex and is a day date, probably, because that's the most iconic one, and most people won't notice that it doesn't have the day window at the top and isn't a 36 mil because it's so close. So if you're looking for that solid gold Rolex and that's your only criteria, that's what you want, I think that this is the best value out there, just because you're really getting what you'd get from a solid gold Datejust or day date, but at a much more reasonable price of $6,650. So now I'm going to mention that this watch was provided to us by JB Hudson Jewelers, and it is currently for sale. I'll be leaving a link to their website in the description if you would like to inquire about purchasing this or see any of the other watches in their collection. Thank you guys for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks.